Greetings. I'm Brother Judah from the Congregation of Israel, a representative of the NMP, the Nazarene Messianic Party, and I am your host today. And I'd like to greet all of our listeners to our podcast, What is to Be Done. Here we investigate geopolitical, historical, biblical, social, and other scientific content. We approach the Bible from a social political perspective because, again, we argue that is the appropriate way to approach the Bible because it deals with kingdoms, nations, societies, civilizations, in short, politics and social sciences. Today, we want to investigate on the ground the common person struggle in the capitalist system and the crises in which the capitalist system causes among the civilization or civilians in said societies which have or which has capital or capitalism as the social economic mode of production. We're going to look at a video today of a young woman who is facing the trials and the exploitation and the unfairness or coldness of the capitalist and the capitalist system. We want to look at the American cost of living crisis. And as I said before, our teachings connects for the most part. So once we continue our investigation into socialism and the church, hopefully if people have taken the time to listen, for example, to this episode, then they can probably understand the necessity of the ancient church, the church or political assembly, because that's where the word church comes from, ecclesia, which was a political assembly, more specifically of males over 20 in the Grecian Empire. So this term was used by the Apostle Paul to identify the believers of Yeshua ben David, or Jesus the Christ. And so this political assembly was a resuscitation of the political assembly which was led by Moses. And we argue that this assembly, which was led by Moses, or God called Moses to lead, exploited laborers out of colonial and monarchical exploitation to set up a society of equity and justice, egalitarianism, a society of free producers where exploitation would be stomped out. These historical roots are important for us to understand the historical Jesus of Nazareth. The capitalists have gotten their hands in the mix, and so they read you verses of the Bible, but they don't really teach it. But they read verses, people are familiar with certain verses, and they take these verses out of context. And oftentimes, they'll tell you that you don't need, which they, in error, call the books from Genesis to Malachi the Old Testament. That is really not accurate. But they tell you don't need those books, you just need the books from Matthew to Revelation, which is another error when they say that is the New Testament. But nevertheless, they strip the very foundations and roots of Jesus. And it appears that a lot of people are not familiar with the biblical narrative and theme. So we want to bring this to people's attention. And it fits into the arguments in which we present concerning social justice. Because we argue the Bible isn't a religious book when we saying religious in the context of how people identify religion today. So this session will help, I believe, put in perspective the teachings that we present when we go more into the Holy Scripture. But the American people, and not just the American people, but the people over the globe are in a crisis. And we want to look at it. And one of the problems that the people face is that, as we discussed before, in capitalism in particular, ignorance is key. As we had looked in our last session, when we looked at a quote from Ho Chi Minh, the liberation leader of the Vietnamese who struggled to free themselves from the exploitation of France and American empire. Here in 1924, Ho Chi Minh was making reference to Vladimir Lenin, who had passed away. But in the midst of Ho Chi Minh giving his condolences and explaining to us how Lenin was adored by many people who never even seen him, he's going to mention something else about the imperialist tendency, a deliberate tendency to keep people in ignorance. So Ho Chi Minh said, Lenin is dead. This news struck the people like a bolt from the blue. It spread to every corner of the fertile plains of Africa and the green fields of Asia. It is true that the black or yellow people do not yet know clearly who Lenin is or where Russia is. The imperialists have deliberately kept them in ignorance. Ignorance is one of the chief mainstays of capitalism. So this is very, very true. Ignorance is different from stupidity. We're not calling people stupid. Ignorance is just a state in which all of us are in until we are informed. And what we find is that the American people and the people of the world are in ignorance. Many of them, especially in the developed countries. And we're going to hear this as we look through videos and analyze arguments. One consistency that we will find among the people we listen to who's frustrated with the social conditions is that they will use the word they, and meaning some will say they are doing this to us, they are doing that to us, or they say them, they, or the system, never clearly identifying who the they are, never clearly identifying who are the them. Who's them? And they do not clearly identify the system. They just say the system. So this demonstrates a level of ignorance. They don't know. They don't know. And it is the job of the biblical evangelist to inform people, to teach, and to expose the powers of darkness so that people can identify what they're up against and what they're facing. And we will see the same idea in this video today, but this video we're going to look at today is very interesting because whether this woman knows it or not, she wants socialism. And the more perfect form of socialism, because socialism is the first phase of the development of a communist society. I know you've been told communism don't work. I know you've been told socialism don't work. It works. There's a reason why the capitalists say it doesn't work, and we can explain that to you in other sessions. And two, there's never been a communist country. And I know the capitalists told you China was communist. I know they told you Cuba was communist and thus and such. But this is what they tell the ignorant, the uninformed. There's never been a communist society as far as the developed world as we know it today. No, China wasn't communist. Under Chairman Mao, they never claimed to be. The USSR wasn't communist. That's why it is the Union of Soviets, of a socialist republic. They didn't call themselves communist. The Communist Party set up socialism, but the country had not reached communism. So we have other discussions explaining it as well. Nevertheless, this woman we're going to listen to today, she definitely needs to explore socialism. So we're going to look at the videos. We're going to hear some of her concerns. And we want to make the point why it is important to be informed. And we also want to demonstrate, as Ho Chi Minh said, capitalism can stay in its place. It stands firm chiefly because of the people's ignorance. So let's begin to look into this discussion here.
Hey y'all, hey.
So again, we will have the link to the video at the bottom, and I keep forgetting this YouTube content maker name, this young high school young man. It's on his channel, so we will have a link so you can look at his channel and other of his content so you could like and subscribe. However, we want to look at this discussion today. We want to look at the concerns of this woman, and we want to see if we can make sense of it and also demonstrate the cries that the people have, the turmoil that the people are going through, the torment that the people are going through to try to understand why things are the way they are and wanting to know how to get out of the situation. All right. So we want to check this out and let us get into it.
Hey y'all, hey. I just left my doctor's office and I gotta be honest. Ever since my breakdown and the pandemic, I can't see the world the same. I can't interact with the world the same. And we've been trying to figure out how I should navigate the world. Trying to manage my symptoms. I'm literally allergic to this society. I have no desire to participate, and I literally don't have the energy to do anything because all my energy is wrapped up in just trying to fucking survive. I don't care about the things that we were told we should care about. I don't give a fuck about none of it. You feel me? Like, now that I see through the veil and I understand now what has happened to us and what we're doing, like, I feel like conspiracy theorists and, you know, woke people, whatever the fuck you want to call it, it's just a fucking another way for them to keep us controlled, right? Like, I remember having these thoughts and like pushing them down because I wasn't comfortable sharing them, because it went against everything that was normal in fucking society. But they came from somewhere, right? Like, why am I having these thoughts? Why am I feeling this way? This shit is not natural. We're not living in a natural way. And balance is about to be restored because everybody that sees through the veil and all the shit that's happening is waking up. We're waking up and starting to question shit. Like, we're literally like a big ass human experiment. They keep doing shit knowing the impact it will have on our subconscious mind and our behaviors and our belief system. They know how this shit works. Why didn't they teach us this shit in school? Because they don't want us to know. They don't.
All right. Yeah, I would argue that more people, they are as they face more of a strait and the conditions get harsh, they recognize something is wrong. However, if you notice how often the woman who's expressing her grievances, how often she used the word they. They're doing this to us. Why didn't they teach us this in school? Because they don't want us to know. Well, who are the they? And this is why our ministry takes the path it takes. Because the people must understand who are the they. Who are they? All right. What is the system? All right. So she's saying, why didn't they teach us this in school? Who are the they? And what was it that they were supposed to teach us in school? You see, one thing that it is important to recognize is that you have in the school system, in the school apparatuses, you have tiers of education. The laboring class is just simply taught to be laborers, to raise up a new race of laborers. This was the argument of early economists like Adam Smith and many of the other capitalists. The laborers are to raise up laborers. Rockefeller and his companions argue that we need a race of laborers who's going to know how to develop this new phase of the capitalist industry after it was leaving or moving or developing from semi-feudal restraints. Then you have another tier, private schools, aristocratic class. They taught a little differently. They taught a little bit more about politics. Some argue they're taught to rule, and the masses are taught to serve. However, if we can break out of the status quo, it's upon us, if God allow, to research. Yes, they keep us occupied though. Games and sports and amusement parks and gossip and this and that, because these are deterrents. But once you get to the point where this woman is, and also this young man who's critiquing in the video as well, whose interest now is to find out what's happening, then you become teachable. You're looking. All right. So the education is there the people who are in seats of government, let me show you how this works so we can begin partly to identify the they. Let's see how this works. We're going to come back to this. Okay, we're going to come back to this. But I want to show you something here. How this works. The they are the capitalists. Capitalists have various industries. Some industries are connected, and the capitalists compete within these industries. But the ones who control the industries, the capitalists who control the industries, let's say like John D. Rockefeller, who probably have a lot of control of the petroleum industry, the pharmaceutical industries, or some variants of the sort, they will influence education. So what we have here, we have this caricature of a capitalist and a puppet. I want people to understand this because we're all bound by law. And I like to stress that the people in power don't do what they want to do. It appears they do because of our ignorance, again, on procedures, how laws are made, loopholes, how to fill the loopholes, how to exploit loopholes. But all this is in the struggle for human liberation. It's important for us to learn it. What we have done is taken the path where, all right, these politicians, y'all deal with it. We have allowed our freedoms and our political power to be made void by yielding to the rich. And so the rich they don't have any competition as far as who will sit in seats of power. They don't have any competition, so they could put their men in power. Why can they put their men in power? Because a lot of people, because they don't understand the way that for example, the electorate process works, they say it doesn't work, and then they throw their hands up and walk away. This is exactly what the rich want, because then he could put people in office to formulate laws that will influence our lives. But we could change those laws, you see. But we have to know how it works, how it happens. We could change the entire face of society. That is the way in which the founding fathers established it. It echoes in the Declaration of Independence. When anyone begin to interfere with life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, it is the duty of the governed to remove them, because they only have their power, those who sit in seats of power in Congress, executive, or judicial, they only have their power because of our say-so. Well, what happens when we no longer participate? Where we don't exercise our say-so because of our ignorance? Then the rich take full advantage of the open court. They have no competition. They take full advantage. So the rich man put a congressman in office. The rich man will work once he put congressmen, and they're battling among each other as well. Which rich man gonna put who in office? So you get the people who fund the schools of Harvard and Yale and thus and such. Then they look for candidates that will work in their behalf. This is how it works. So we can identify the they once we look and see, okay, well, who's influencing us? In a sense, let's say, for example, wages. Who determines it? Acts of Congress. For example, federal minimum wage. We looked at one, it's $7.25. Who determines whether wages go up or not? Congress. Well, what if you fill Congress with people who support the capitalists? Then they will keep wages low and they will allow legislations for commodities to rise because they're working for the rich. But the only reason why it works is because we yield. We refuse to enter the arena in the struggle for political power. So we can, that is the worker, could create a nation or a situation where justice prevails. So here you have the rich man. He put his person in the seats of a House of Representative, or he put him as a senator. Very little competition. Take very little, very few voters to put him in. It's not many people competing. They walk right in. Next thing you know, they passing laws, and we out on the corner arguing, acting a fool. They don't care about that. That don't work. Long as you're not aware of how it works in the halls of government. Once you start to learn that, then it becomes concerning. So what the woman was asking, well, why don't they teach us this in school? This is the stuff we got to learn on your own. The ones that they're teaching about government are the kids in the private schools or the kids who are the children of rich people, because they're cultivating their children so they can also continue to work to put people in power that will pass laws and work in the behalf of the rich. But it doesn't have to be that way. We only let it be that way. And our obscurity on how it works, since we don't really know how it works, we believe we're powerless. And that is all part of the scheme. That's all part of the scheme. So let us go back here to this woman here. This is what we have here. This is the setup. We have to identify the they. We have to identify who owns what. Who's behind the automobile industry, the banking industry, all of the players. Who's sitting in seats of Congress? All right. And when we're saying this, you have to get out of the slave mentality. Us whites and blacks and Latinos and Asians, we're in this, many of us are in the slave mentality because we believe that we have to sit idly by until the rich man throw another candidate in our face and tell us to vote for them. That's not how it works either. That is simply not how it works. This is the way in which we allowed it to be. It doesn't have to work that way. But we have further discussions to get more in detail. But I just wanted to show you here, this is where it starts. The rich man put people in the seats of power, but we can very well do it ourselves because power really is in our hands. It's just simply time for, but it will not be realized as long as we're unorganized and ignorant. That's why Ho Chi Minh said, the mainstay of capitalism is ignorance. That's its mainstay. All right, the chief. So let us go back here and listen to a little bit more of what she was explaining, because she said they're not teaching us this in school, but we have to identify who the they are. We have to look at this and critique it very carefully.
Hey, y'all. Hey. I just left my doctor's office, and I gotta be honest. Ever since my breakdown and the pandemic, I just can't see the world the same. I can't interact with the world the same. And we've been trying to figure out how I should navigate the world. Trying to manage my symptoms. I'm literally allergic to this society. I have no desire to participate. And I literally don't have the energy to do anything because all my energy is wrapped up in just trying to fucking survive. I don't care about the things that we were told we should care about. I don't give a fuck about none of it. You feel me? Like, now that I see through the veil and I understand now what has happened to us and what we're doing, like, I feel like conspiracy theorists and, woke people, whatever the fuck you want to call it, it's just a fucking another way for them to.
So again, listen to the verbiage. Listen to what she's explaining. The they. All right. So hopefully we can start to expose what this is. But you can see frustration mounts when you can't identify what the problem is. You see there's a problem, but you just don't know what's happening. So it's very important for us to understand this.
To keep us controlled, right? Like, I remember having happen to us and what we're doing. Like, I feel like conspiracy theorists and, woke people, whatever the fuck you want to call it, it's just a fucking another way for them to keep us controlled, right? Like, I remember having these thoughts and like pushing them down because I wasn't comfortable sharing them, because it went against everything that was normal in fucking society. But they came from somewhere, right? Like, why am I having these thoughts? Why am I feeling this way? This shit is not natural. We're not living in a natural way. And balance is about to be restored because everybody that sees through the veil and all the shit that's happening is waking up. We're waking up and starting to question shit. Like, we're literally like a big ass human experiment. They keep doing shit knowing the impact it will have on our subconscious mind and our behaviors and our belief system. They know how this shit works. Why didn't they teach us this shit in school? Because they don't want us to know. They want to control us. And we're out here thinking we're free and we're making choices. No, is it really a choice if they give you the things to choose from? Are you really free? Like, that shit blows my mind. I have no interest, and I look at people like, get the fuck out of my face. Like, I literally don't have the energy to do anything else. My brain and all the stuff I was doing before, that shit it doesn't make sense. None of it makes sense. After my breakdown, or before my breakdown, when things started crumbling around me and things were falling apart, I was like, what the fuck is going on? The biggest catalyst for me was when I got sick from working from home, I ended up having pulmonary embolism. I was hospitalized for like 3 days. And shortly after, my job started phasing people back into the office, just during the pandemic. My doctors suggesting that I do not go back into the office out of fear of getting exposed to COVID, because I'm still recovering from my lung condition. When my job pushed back and basically said, we don't care that you were just hospitalized, you still got to come into the office. Mind you, I was working from home for over 2 years, doing my job efficiently. My direct supervisor approved the fact that I can still continue work from home, but they wanted to push back and basically said they didn't give a fuck if I died or not. Because if my doctors are saying that I have a lung condition that can possibly cause complications and death if I get exposed to COVID, why would you demand that I come back into the office? And this is the shit I'm talking about. Like, the things that they think they have control over, they think that they should be able to make decisions like that for your life. Like, you just proved to me that you don't give a fuck about me. And that shit hit hard, yo. I was like, what? And then the fight began after that. Like, after that, everything's changed for me. Everything changed for me. I was like, I can't. What the fuck? I'm not doing it. I started saying no. I was like, I don't care. And I filed civil rights complaints. I went up to HR. I filed a federal lawsuit. Like, all the things, exhausted all my resources trying to fight my case. And even during this time, the process, I'm being told that you're up against a Goliath. I'm like, then call me David, yo. What the fuck? You know what I mean? Like,
Yes, she is up against a Goliath, but it shouldn't be her up against it alone. But this is another demonstration of there is no organization among the working people, the working class people. She realized in her labor that she's just simply a commodity. A lot of people realize it. They say we're just a number. They don't care. Yes, we are human resources, just like coal, just like iron, just like gasoline. You're just a resource, for example, to heat a building, to run vehicles. That's why you go to HR, human resources. You're just like timber. You're to be used by the capitalist and exhausted to its extreme. And then the idea, according to Adam Smith, is that you have children. That has a lot to do with the minimum wage. The minimum wage is the least they can pay you without you dying off. So the minimum wage, that's what they used to call it minimum wage, now is living wage. Who determines this? The legislators. Why is it that they have so much control? Because we failed to struggle and use our political power, which is weakened if we are unorganized. If we organize the way that the governments are set up, we can remove all this injustice we're talking about. The power is in the hands of the people. And the Bible teaches this same argument, that the messianic body, the messianic concept, is a body of people. It's not a being coming out of the clouds. Oftentimes when people read that in the Bible, they take literal anthropomorphic language or apocalyptic symbolisms. But a lot of people don't understand the Bible. They read it, they can quote it, they're acquainted with it, but they don't really understand its teachings. Its teachings is primarily, or one of the fundamentals of its teaching, is justice against exploitation of labor. And the Bible teaches that the correction of the earth, the renovation that the earth will go through, the social renovation that the earth will go through, it is to be conducted by the Creator through the hands of the human, the highest pinnacle of creation. The human being is the housing where the invisible God will be made known. So church is always talking about God is in you. A lot of them I've learned don't really know what they're saying. The human being is the host of the invisible power, the architect of the cosmos and the universe. The human being becomes the physical image of this power. And this physical image distinctly is to perform deeds of justice and to smash injustice, because according to the biblical language, love is justice and righteousness. Not this emotional stuff people hear, that you hear on movies and theater. Oh, love this, write you a card. It's much deeper than that. And so the people must realize that the Bible itself is arguing that it is your job to be the weapon of God to change the face of the earth, or as the prophet in the songs of Isaiah, to lay the foundations of the earth and plant the heavens. This is the person's job who desires uprightness and justice. That means all imperialism, all exploitation, all plunder is to be removed by men. And the men will be strengthened by the Holy Ghost in the hand of God to remove injustices out of the world. As Amos argues, the one who laid the foundations of the earth, the one who put in order the constellations of the heavens, that power strengthens the hand of the spoiled to go against the fortresses, to go against the strong. So it's important that we understand this, Okay. And what this woman is feeling, hopefully, this is what our ministry is gearing towards. These people must be reached, and they could take it or leave it. That's why study groups are important. People are looking for answers. So this is what we have to take into consideration, all right? And we have to do something about this. The pain that's coming from this woman, the frustration that's coming from this woman, even to the point she's going to lose that even living is really not much lit. Even life itself is something that uh, she is given a disregard to. All right. So let her finish arguing her position, voicing her grievances, and we know there's many more out there like her. It's a job that must be done, and you can't keep waiting and waiting for either to disappear one day. People talk about some rapture and all this other stuff and spaceships coming. The Bible don't support none of that. The Bible argues that the human being is the vehicle to make the change in the earth.
Planes. I went up to HR. I filed a federal lawsuit. Like all the things, exhausted all my resources trying to fight my case. And even was during this time, the process, I'm being told that you're up against a Goliath. I'm like, then call me David, yo. What the fuck? You know what I mean? Like, don't try to make this shit okay. Don't try to humble me and tell me to stand down because you're not going to be able to. No, fuck you and fuck the system. Because at the end of the day, this is my life. And if I am not here, you're all going to move the fuck on. So I have to prioritize myself. And I don't even know what that fucking looks like because I've never had to do that before. Well, not had to, but I should have. But I've never done it before, right? I've always been dependent on external things for everything. And everything came to light. Everything started unraveling. And I was forced to face myself. So I'm grateful for all the things that I went through. Don't get me wrong. But it exposed so much that I can't function in society anymore. I can't function under these rules, these systems, none of it. I can't.
You see, so she's saying the system, sister, is capital. Capitalism is the system. And your symptoms shows the systems in which you the symptoms in which you display are the direct cause of capitalism and its mode of production. The news and social media, they don't mention that word too much. They don't talk about capitalism too much. I'll give you an example of what I mean from what the sister was describing. She talked about her and her job, and she argued they didn't care whether she lived or died. They wanted her to come back to the office even though that she was recovering from an illness. Remember that? We want to pick it up. So she said this system. So let us make this connection with this system, and we're going to give you a description of the type of system. This system is the capitalist system. The capitalist system is the bastard child of the feudal system. Feudal system is the primitive form of capital. Both systems are hated by God. Both systems the Bible speak against. Moses' struggle and the freedom of the children of Israel was the liberation from a feudal system, primitive capital. But let us pick this up. Listen to what she said. Let's see if we go as far back when she was talking about her job. And we want to look at that. We want to examine that a little bit more so we could put the system together and show you that how it's connected. She's literally suffering from the symptoms of capital.
Basically said, we don't care that you were just hospitalized. You still got to. After my job started phasing people back into the office, just during the pandemic, my doctors suggesting that I do not go back into the office out of fear of getting exposed to COVID, because I'm still recovering from my lung condition. When my job pushed back and basically said, we don't care that you were just hospitalized, you still got to come into the office. Mind you, I was working from home for over 2 years, doing my job efficiently. My direct supervisor approved the fact that I can still continue work from home, but they wanted to push back and basically said they didn't give a fuck if I died or not. Because if my doctors are saying that I have a lung condition that can possibly cause complications and death if I get exposed to COVID, why would you demand that I come back into the office? And this is the shit I'm talking about, like the things that they think they have control over. They think that they should be able to make decisions like that for your life. Like, you just proved to me that you don't give a fuck about me. And that shit hit hard, yo. I was like, what? And then the fight began after that. Like, after that, everything's changed for me. Everything changed for me. I was like, I can't.
All right, so you see what Capital have done. Let's go into Capital Volume 1. And this is the work of Karl Marx, Capital Volume 1. And we're going to be looking at Chapter 10, The Working Day. Chapter 10, The Working Day. And I want to read something to you. And we're going to go into, we're going to start on page 375, Volume 1 of Capital. This will be Chapter 10, Section 5, The Struggle for a Normal Working Day. So we start with this context. She's at work. She was working from home. So this really isn't talking about her location of work. It is the requirement that the capitalists want from her, and how she realized they didn't care whether she was sick or not, because she's just a resource. She's a human resource like all of us. All right. The school system, the compulsory school system, is pretty much like an assembly line. First, if you just imagine building a car before it's released off the assembly line for usage. Kindergarten, they build the frame. First, second, and third grade, they putting on tires and doors and, putting in windows, all the way into the 12th grade, where the product is almost finished. But if you want a more fancier car, more bells and whistles, you go through a further process, which is so-called higher education. And once you finish, you are usable. You are a usable commodity, just like a car. So the school system is designed to create commodities for the usage of the capitalists. These capitalists don't care about your well-being. As I said previously, we're human resources to be used up like any other resource. So here in Chapter 10 on the working day, Marx says, what is a working day? What is the length of time during which capital may consume the labor power whose daily value it has paid for? So we sell ourselves. And that's what we looked at. George Washington Goodby, he argues capitalism is a form of slavery. It's just wage slavery and not chattel slavery. So we sell ourselves. And what we're selling our labor power. That's what we're selling, okay? Now, it says, we have seen that capital's reply to these questions is this: the working day contains the full 24 hours with the deduction of the few hours of rest, without which labor power is absolutely incapable of renewing its services. So when we're looking at labor power, we're talking about the human being. So they know 24 hours is in a working day. However, the capitalists know that in order for the labor power to be useful, it must have a few hours of rest. All right, so we're talking about the human being and his exploited labor by capital. See, we got to identify the system. We just can't keep saying system. We have to say capitalism so people could begin to be moved and agitated to critique it and to investigate it for themselves and stop listening to the capitalists telling you it's the best thing we got going. So the capitalists know that that labor power needs a few hours of rest, without which labor power is absolutely incapable of renewing its services. Hence, it is self-evident that the worker is nothing other than labor power for the duration of his whole life, and that therefore all his disposable time is by nature and by right labor time. This is how the capitalists identify us, simply as laborers. In our next session, we'll read the obscure meaning of the word America. Not people say, well, America, land of the free, home of the brave. Not what you say. What you say it means. That's not the definition of the word America. You could say what it means to you, the country, but what does the word mean? And it's very interesting how it ties back into labor. But the duration of the workman's life is just simply a life of labor. This is how the capitalists understand the human resource, where it's argued it is self-evident that the worker is nothing other than labor power for the duration of his whole life, and that therefore all his disposable time is by nature and by right labor time to be devoted to the self-valorization of capital. So the idea of self-valorization of capital is profit making, for your capital to be valorized, for it to be honored. Your investment should have a return. So this is the language Marx is using. Valorization of capital. What makes your capital honorable, applaudable? Oh, if it makes a return. In other words, if it makes profit. So the laborer, the person, their life is to be devoted. Here in the capitalist countries, the worker, the proletariat, their life is to be devoted to the profit of capital. Time for education, for intellectual development, for the fulfillment of social functions, for social intercourse, for the free play of the vital forces of his body and his mind, even the rest time of Sunday or Sabbatarians. What foolishness. See, he's being sarcastic. This is what the capitalists think. What do you mean? Time for education. What do you mean for time for intellectual development? What are you talking about, this fulfillment of social functions and this social intercourse where human beings can enjoy themselves and to learn and to grow together and exercise talents for free play of the vital forces, exercise the mind, exercise art, and whatever you desire to do in this magnificent creation, to exercise the vital forces of the mind and body, even times of rest. Marx said, whether it's Saturdays or Sundays, the capitalist argues, what foolishness. We don't want to hear that. Marx continues, but in its blind and measurable drive, speaking of capital, its insatiable appetite for surplus labor or extra laborers, capital oversteps not only the moral, but even the merely physical limits of the working day. It usurps the time for growth, speaking of the human being, Capital usurps the time for growth, development, and healthy maintenance of the body. It steals the time required for the consumption of fresh air and sunlight. It haggles over the meal times. Can't even have a decent meal because you're working. You can't get out and enjoy nature because you shoved off in some mine or some office somewhere. It haggles over meal times, where possible, incorporating them into the production process itself, so that food is added to the worker as a mere means of production, as coal is supplied to the boiler, and grease and oil to the machinery. He said, yeah, the capitalists feed you. They feed us the worst of foods. Why? Because it's an act of Congress. That's why we have to understand how it works, how this schema is being played on us. And once we understand how it's being played on us, then we can learn, man, we got full power to change this tomorrow if we wanted to. But it's the organization process. It is the educational process. Until then, we're treated like just mere machinery or equipment. So as the capitalists use coal to supply their boilers or natural gas, or as they may use grease to oil up machinery, to keep the machinery running, to keep the furnaces going, that's the same thing how they consider the food for the worker. It's fuel. So you can exert labor power for the valorization of capital, or in other words, for the increasing of profits. Capital, it reduces the sound sleep needed for the restoration, renewal, and refreshment of the vital forces to the exact amount of torpor essential for the revival and absolutely essential to the revival of an absolutely exhausted organism. It works you. Capital reduces the person and reduces their sleep, I should say, to the absolute minimum of rest. And it deprives you, the exhausted body. It deprives you of restoration. See, this is what this woman was talking about. She needed rest. She needed restoration. But the capitalists don't care about the exhausted organism. It is not the normal maintenance of the labor power which determines the limits of the working day here, but rather the greatest possible daily expenditure of labor power. No matter how diseased, compulsory, and painful it may be, which determines the limits of the worker's period of rest, capital asks no questions about the length of life of labor power. It don't really care. You got a new generation coming up, a new batch graduating from high school, a new batch graduating from college to continue to feed the capitalist machine. It attains this objective by shortening the life of the labor power, in the same way as a greedy farmer snatches more produce from the soil by robbing it of its fertility. By extending the working day, therefore, capitalist production, which is essentially the production of surplus value or producing of profits, the absorption of surplus labor, which is laborers, workers, extra workers, that's what surplus labor means. They have an abundance of workers, and they absorb these workers. Not only produces a deterioration of human labor power by robbing it of its normal moral and physical conditions of development and activity, but also produces premature exhaustion and death of this labor power itself. It extends the workers' production time. It makes them work long hours within a given period by shortening his life. You work long hours. You work for the capitalists. You're exhausted. It's difficult. They work you to the point of exhaustion where you need a deep rest and you don't get it. And when you're used up, then they get your children and they use them. Just like coal, just like natural gas. You see? This is the capitalist system. We must understand how it works. And we must realize that the reason why it works is because we let them. They are sitting in seats of power because we let them. Stop thinking that in order for change to be made, you got to have money. That is another fallacy of the capitalists. Why do they teach you that? Because if you don't have no money, you default into there's no hope. There's nothing we can do. It's a lie. It's a lie. So let me go with this and I'm going to let her finish explain. I just want to read this other part. Still in chapter 10. Of course, the pretensions of capital in its embryonic state. Let me see. I'll make sure I want this one. Yep. In its embryonic state of becoming, when it cannot yet use the sheer force of economic relation to secure its right to absorb a sufficient quantity of surplus labor, speaking of laborers, right? Because we have this excess of laborers. Put in perspective, for example, you have 100 jobs and you train 1,000 people for those 100 jobs. It's all a part of the schema. There's not enough jobs in the capitalist system for everyone. They must have a level of competition. These extra workers, unemployed workers with skills, and these unemployed workers who don't went to school and they're qualified, they join the surplus labor force. They help keep wages down because if they're hungry enough, they'll work for cheaper. So this surplus labor is what the capitalists want to absorb. They want to absorb a sufficient quantity of surplus labor, but must be aided by the power of the state. Its pretensions in this situation appear very modest in comparison with the concessions it has to make. Complainingly and unwillingly in its adult competition. Centuries are required before the free worker, owing to the greater development of the capitalist mode of production, makes a voluntary agreement. That is, the free worker, they're forced or compelled by social conditions to sell the whole of his active life, his very capacity for labor, in return for the price of his customary means of subsistence or his wages that he need to eat, shelter, and have more children to feed them into the machine, or as Marx says, to sell his birthright for a mess of pottage. Here he's making reference to the incident what happened with Esau. And that biblical incident with Esau ties right in to what we're talking about if we understand the Bible politically. But the laborer is nothing but a resource to be used up. The life and the well-being of the laborer in the world of the capitalist is no more than the usage of his machine, his draft animal. That's it. Right? So she's feeling it. The people are feeling it. But they must understand what's happening. All right? So let me let her finish up here. God willing, we're going to continue with more discussion as we analyze these things, as we said here, on what is to be done as we analyze geopolitical, historical, biblical, social, and other scientific content. But notice, let her
control over. They think that they should be able to make decisions like that for your life. Like, you just proved to me that you don't give a fuck about me. And that shit hit hard, yo. I was like, what? And then the fight began after that. Like, after that, everything's changed for me. Everything changed for me. I was like, I can't. What the fuck? I'm not doing it. I started saying no. I was like, I don't care. And I filed civil rights complaints. I went up to HR. I filed a federal lawsuit. Like, all the things, exhausted all my resources trying to fight my case. And even was during this time, the process, I'm being told that you're up against a Goliath. I'm like, then call me David, yo. What the fuck? You know what I mean? Like, don't try to make this shit okay. Don't try to humble me and tell me to stand down because you're not going to be able to. No, fuck you and fuck the system. Because at the end of the day, this is my life. And if I am not here, you're going to move the fuck on. So I have to prioritize myself. And I don't even know what that fucking looks like because I've never had to do that before. Well, not had to, but I should have. But I've never done it before, right? I've always been dependent on external things for everything. And everything came to light. Everything started unraveling. And I was forced to face myself. So I'm grateful for all the things that I went through. Don't get me wrong. But it exposed so much that I can't function in society anymore. I can't function under these rules, these systems, none of it. I can't. And I'm not going to be forced to. I literally don't give a fuck what the consequences are. Because death at this point is a fucking... That's not a threat. That's not a threat. That's something I gladly welcome.
Think about what the woman is explaining as she air out her grievances to the point that living itself, she feels that it's not much to live for. That's the point of despair which capitalists have driven into. As you look at the grinning of the rich and famous, and they show you on TV this fictitious world of all of the prosperous, this is how it is on the ground for the vast majority.
You know what I mean? Like, I return to whatever. Like, this body can go to fucking hell because it's been programmed by somebody else. It hasn't been programmed by me. So I'm now trying to figure out how my body works, understand who I am, and connect with whatever the fuck that I'm supposed to have been connected to. And I look around and there's nothing in this society that supports this. I don't want no parts of it. I'm over it. I'm fucking over it. And I just left my doctor's office, and we're constantly talking about like how to help me recover from the shit that I went through. And they slap a label on you when you start waking up. You know, they give you some mental health disorder or some kind of, whatever, label you crazy because you no longer, like, I'm literally allergic. You can no longer function in this society. I don't want to work for nobody because I realize they don't give a fuck about me just to make money to pay for shit that y'all made up, that y'all are stealing from the earth anyway. Like, all this shit is made from natural fucking resources. Everything.
See, that's why I said in the beginning, this woman wants socialism, because this is exactly what socialism argues, that the resources of the earth should not be privately owned and siphoned off into the hands of the minority. The resources of the earth should be made available to the humans who live on this earth. You see? So, no, she's not crazy. Is she on the path to awakening? Sound like it. But that's why educational apparatuses need to be set up to combat or to be a counterculture, a counter-educational apparatus to the present day status quo. Yes, the earth resources should be available to man. This is what socialism teach. And it is to reach a zenith of perfection in what we call communism, where you don't need a government or anyone sitting in seats of power for the human being to conduct himself in justice and equity. The Bible teaches on that too. It teaches on it both. That's why we have discussions from Moses' socialism to Jesus' communism. Sound foreign to people. But the reason why is because the people are not educated. It's literally there in the Bible. That whole transformation and process, where the earth will become, where the people live on the earth will become owners of the earth, signified in the Holy Scriptures as kings and priests. Everyone. So the figurative language of everyone being a king and a priest is that no man will have autonomy and authority and rule over another. They will all have equal autonomy, and they will live on this earth in justice and in equity. The Bible is a political text, and it teaches us the path to liberation and justice. And this is this woman looking for, and many others like her. She's right about the resources, right? Capitalism will not provide that for us. It's designed. And the only reason capitalism lives is because we let it live. Remember, it's built off the back of the laborer. If the laborer ceased to labor for the capitalist today, capitalism ends.
Label you crazy because you no longer, like, I'm literally allergic. You can no longer function in this society. I don't want to work for nobody because I realize they don't give a fuck about me, just to make money to pay for shit that y'all made up, that y'all are stealing from the earth anyway. Like, all this shit is made from natural fucking resources. Everything. Every single thing that you see, that you use, everything, this car, this phone, your spoon, everything. They figure out how to use natural resources to create something. And then when you invent money and then exploit people to make the money to buy the thing that you fucking use natural resources to create. Why are we not just sharing and evolving as a society? If I create something from natural resources that we all can benefit from, why would I not just share it?
That's it. It's not even complicated. Once it's something natural, inherent inside of the human who don't want to harm another. What she is describing is the fruits of a socialist system that blossoms into what we call a capitalist system, a communist system, that blossoms into a communist system where you won't need a government to tell you to share resources. You won't need a government to tell you, each and every individual, are owners of this earth and we have our portion in this earth. Natural. What she's describing is natural. It is all a part of the natural law of the cosmos. In its bare simplicity, she recognized a universal truth. Why aren't we doing it? Because we've been persuaded to follow another path. And this path we've been persuaded to follow, we're ignorant of it. And we're just like the Bible says. We're lost. But the Bible shows the way to be found. Where exactly what she's describing, that's how the society will evolve. And it's going to be the human hand through the power of God that shall bring this about. She's hitting her right on it. That's where she's going. That's what this woman need to hear. She need to hear the gospel of the kingdom of God, the social political gospel of the kingdom of God.
To create something. And then when you invent money and then exploit people to make the money to buy the thing that you fucking use natural resources to create. Why are we not just sharing and evolving as a society? If I create something from natural resources that we all can benefit from, why would I not just share it? None of this shit makes sense, and nobody's been questioning it, and now we're all sitting here watching this shit fucking crumble. But hey, it's America for you, right? Fucking over it.
I think a lot of people hear stuff like this and instantly jump to, nah, they're doing too much. But when you strip away some of the language,
She said it. She said it. And we're going to get ready to close for today's session. I pray that the sister will come into the knowledges of things, and who knows, I know maybe she can possibly hear some of our teachings, but we're at work because this is a prime example of people crying out for a way out, to be delivered from the capitalists who exploit the people, who offer the people crumbs while they rob the labor of his workers, while they rob the labor of his wealth. How they put people in seats of government because we don't understand how government works. We don't realize that the power is in our hands. And we fall to a deplorable condition, much like this, the scene of Moloch. It's what we fall to. We have the constant treadmill, white and black, laboring for the capitalists. And this scene here is the scene similar to the of Molech. You feed the idol of capital with all of your grain, with all of your toil. And this is what we've been reduced to. We're telling you that the Bible have come to liberate us and show us the path. And we teach and we'll show you that the Holy Ghost isn't some fictitious phantom that religious fanatics talk about, but it is a liberating force. It is a force that teaches education. It is a force that once it enters the individual, the psychology of the individual becomes a tool to reforming society. The individual becomes the weapon of God to remove the injustice out of the earth and to establish and lay the foundations of a new heaven and a new earth, a new state of living, a new function of living. I'm Brother Judah, a member of the Congregation of Israel, representative of the NMP. I'd like to thank everyone who have taken a time out to tune in with us on our podcast, What is to be Done, as we investigate geopolitical, historical, biblical, and other scientific content. Hopefully, Most High willing, we will be back again with more teachings so we can hopefully open up other study groups and run into faithful laborers that are willing to sacrifice their time, put their own desires and their own ambitions to the side and become vessels of learning. And then they also could become those vessels to change the world and have the confidence and the knowledge and the understanding to change the world. It doesn't, and believe me, when people say stuff like that, some people be like, oh boy, that'll take a long time. You would be surprised. As one elder argued in the revolutionary struggle, the change can happen at any moment. And this is exactly what the scriptures teach. It's going to happen at a time in which you think not. A lot of forces are in the earth working towards this development. All right? Our job is to board that train to salvation. So I like to say peace and blessings to all of you who are sincerely searching, and everyone who hath an ear, let them hear.